Hi everyone, I'm Heather. I'm one of the speech and language pathologists working with Great Speech. Today I'm going to talk to you about a brief overview of articulation and phonology. This is probably something you hear your speech therapist talking about a lot, and as parents, we don't all have backgrounds on what that means or what your speech therapist might be talking about. In order for you to be able to feel successful in helping your kids at home, I feel like this might be helpful in kind of figuring out what are you doing, what are you working on, and why are you working on it. I am going to do a short PowerPoint with you talking about some of the background information. So what is an articulation disorder? An articulation disorder is when your child has difficulty with one sound. They can either delete the sound. So our example here is deleting that S on the word bus, substitute a sound. So for instance, making the S sound for the TH sound, adding in a sound. In this example, adding in the B in spaghetti, or distorting a sound. And the example here is making more of a TH sound than an S sound, which is the classic example of a lisp. Sounds develop by an expected age range. So that's what we're looking at when we're assessing your child. We're looking at whether or not they have the sounds that we expect them to have by their age. Intelligibility. So this is a word that speech therapists say a lot as well, and parents don't always know exactly what we mean when we say that. So this is how well you can understand somebody else. So a child who has an articulation or a phonological disorder, their intelligibility is going to be reduced. The people that they know and are familiar with are going to understand them more than people that they don't spend as much time with. However, it's important that both can understand your child effectively. Articulation involves the movement of the lips, tongue, the teeth, the jaw, the soft palate, that's that part of your mouth, that's the rear part of the roof of your mouth, your hard palate, and then the alveolar ridge is something we talk about a lot with our students. That is that bumpy ridge behind your teeth. What causes it? The exact cause is unknown. However, research has shown some contributing factors: hearing loss or frequent ear infections. That's why we often ask you about whether or not your kids have had their hearing checked and how many ear infections they've had. Illnesses, neurological disorders, developmental disorders, genetic disorders, those can all contribute, as well as a family history. So sometimes there's a physical difference in the mouth. There could be a tongue tie, a cleft or lip palate, maybe missing teeth, or the bite is out of alignment. Articulation norms. So this is what we base our decision making off of when we decide what sounds your child might need to work on. So it's helpful as a parent to be able to know what you're looking for. That way, maybe your child's having difficulty with a sound, but you can see on the chart that at this point you don't need to be concerned about that. And modeling that sound might be enough for right now. This link right here will bring you to this chart. And this is one of my favorite websites, homespeechhome.com. It has a lot of really good resources for parents and for professionals as well. Phonological disorder. So this is different than an articulation disorder because you're seeing more of a pattern of incorrect sounds. So an example here is substituting an entire class of sounds for another class of sounds. So one example is something called fronting. So this is when your child might produce a T for a K or a D for a G. They are taking sounds that are made in the back of your mouth and they're producing them in the front because it's easier. Your child might also have difficulty with syllable structure, so changing sounds that modify the syllabic structure of that word. Assimilation is when one sound changes to become more like another sound, and it's usually a sound that's next to that sound. So all of these patterns, we expect them to be gone by the age of 5. Having difficulty with phonological skills can impact things like spelling, writing, reading, phonological awareness. So that would be their ability to understand rhyming words or being able to associate sounds with the letters, and then obviously communicating with others. This is another chart that I really like from homespeechhome.com. It is the phonological processes chart. So these are the different types of processes that we would be looking at. And there's a brief explanation of what it is and what's happening. Now, there's a lot of technical words on here that you may not understand as a parent, and this is where I suggest reaching out to your speech therapist and asking any questions that you might have. I personally often give families handouts on each of these when I am working with a child. There's some examples of what that would sound like in a word, and then when we would expect to see that disappear. During speech therapy sessions, we use a hierarchy of skills. We're building on isolation and moving towards conversation. So oftentimes I let parents know that you might not hear progress in conversation for a little while because it takes time to build to that point. So looking at the chart, we start with the sound by itself, and then we'll add in a syllable. We'll do words, and each sound, not every sound, but most sounds have an initial position, a middle position, and a final position in the word. Then we move to phrases, so that would be 2 to 3 word phrases, sentences, reading. So at the reading level, I usually start with something short, like a paragraph, and maybe build up to something a little bit longer. And then conversation skills. And I usually split conversation between tasks that are a little bit more structured and ones that are unstructured. So like unstructured would be something like telling me a story about something that happened during the day. And structured would be more like giving me a short answer to something. Some basic tips. So overcorrecting your child can possibly lead to talking becoming a negative experience for them, where they feel like they're being corrected all the time and they're not doing it right and it's stressful. And you also may be trying to correct a sound that hasn't developed yet. So this is an important one. For instance, like if you had a 3-year-old and they're struggling with the R sound, we would expect that, and that's completely normal, and it might be really stressful for them if you're trying to correct the R when they're not ready for that. Modeling correct articulation is huge as a parent. So just emphasizing those sounds as you're playing with them or reading to them can be a really huge step. Reading to your child while focusing on words and pictures of the target sounds is also a really great activity you can do with your kids. Here are some references. Home Speech Home is the website that I have used for this PowerPoint. They have a lot of really great resources, and I feel like they're easy to look at without having to click on a lot of tabs. So if you're looking for more information, I would suggest going there. Their website is created by 2 speech therapists who have their own business, and they have done a lot of research and they do a lot of presentations. Sounds of Speech is a really, really great website that comes from the University of Iowa. It gives you the steps to produce the sound as well as a visual of how it's produced in your mouth. This can be really, really helpful for kids and parents when you're not really sure how to help them produce the sound. Word Vault and Articulation Station are 2 apps that you can look at in the Google App Store. I personally use these for therapy sessions. They're not free, but they have a free version, but if you want the full version, you have to pay for it. But they're great if you want to be able to use some pictures with your kid and you don't really want to have to try to find all the pictures all the time and you're playing and doing an activity and you just want to quickly pull up those words. Otherwise, I often send families either a word list or pictures for their kids to use for activities. So that's just kind of a brief overview of speech and language development and some things that you can do at home. If you have any questions, I would definitely recommend reaching out to your speech therapist and asking them anything that you need to know or any resources that you need. I hope you enjoyed this and found some part of it useful. Thank you. Bye.